Hi guys, and welcome back to class. To start today's lesson, I want you guys to read the following phrase. Opinion at Booker T. Washington was sharply divided. House, page 42. So this is going to be on page 42 of your book. And I want you to write a definition of the word opinion in your response journal. So what does the definition of the word opinion what is the definition of the word opinion? Then I want you to ask yourself, what is the difference between an opinion and knowledge? Now moving on, our essential question for this lesson is, how do people affect social change? And our focusing question is, what motivated Claudette Colvin? Our content framing question in our reveal stage says, what does a deeper exploration of responses to Claudette Colvin's actions reveal? And our craft question in our experiment stage says, how does assessing sources work? So let's look at this T-chart. You're going to have this inside of your Schoology. On one side, it's going to say positive responses, and on the other, it's going to say negative responses. And I want you to write, why were there negative reactions to Claudette's stand against injustice? You're going to answer this question. How did adults in Claudette Colvin's community take positive action in response to her stand against injustice? So on your T-chart, you're going to write the positive responses that took place because Claudette Colvin stood up. And then I want you to write the negative responses that the community gave because she stood up. Then let's look at the word integrity. Integrity is a noun. And it means the quality of being honest or having strong morals. So if you have integrity, you stand for something. You're honest. You have strong morals. You want to do the right thing. So like if you see an old lady drop $50 on the ground and she doesn't notice it, in order for you to have integrity, you would have to give that back. You would have to let the lady know that she dropped her money and not steal it, because you would have to have strong morals and you would have to be honest. So knowing what the definition of the word integrity means, how did the positive reaction speak to Claudette Colvin's integrity? Now let's look at the word implication, which is a noun, and it means the suggested conclusion of a result of something. How did the positive reaction speak to Claudette Colvin's integrity? What are the implications of Claudette Colvin's actions on this issue? And why do you think there were so many different responses to Claudette Colvin's actions? Now, there's going to be several other questions that are going to be inside of Schoology because we're doing a lot of in-depth reading in this lesson. And it says, what does it mean that Claudette Colvin's arrest had removed the veneer between white and black citizens of Montgomery? What does veneer mean in this context? And what made Claudette in her case uniquely suited to challenge Jim Crow? Why does it matter that Claudette Colvin pleaded not guilty at her trial? I want you to respond to this question in 3 to 4 sentences. What was the importance of this here? Now on to learning how to assess sources. Let's look at the word primary source or phrase. A primary source is a direct or first-hand account that provides an unaltered information. And a secondary source is an account that interprets, describes, or analyzes or summarizes information from a primary source. So I want you to think about, where have you encountered primary sources so far in this module? So, for example, a primary source, once again, is a source that is coming straight from the horse's mouth. So if something happened to me, I'm going to tell you from my point of view, from the first or the primary point of view. But if I tell that story to my best friend, and then my best friend goes and tells you, then that is a secondary source. Now I want you to look at the newspaper article on page 50. How can you assess the bias of a source? So when someone is biased, it means that they're already on one side of the issue. So if I'm going to write an article about whether I believe that Krispy Kreme donuts and Shipley's donuts are better, and I think that Krispy Kreme donuts are better than Shipley's donuts, my article is probably going to be mostly about how Krispy Kreme has great ingredients and maybe how they have more variety of donuts, and I'm going to be boasting. And so if you read that, you're going to be able to tell that I have a bias against Shipley's because I'm giving more information and more big ups to Krispy Kreme. So if you read the Alabama Journal on page 50, whose side do they seem like they're on? Who are they giving the most praise to? That's how you can find out the bias of a source. How did Claudette display a sense of agency before and after her trial? Now, ending this lesson in our content framing question in our reveal stage, it says, what does a deeper exploration of responses to Claudette's actions reveal? And how did Claudette display a sense of agency before and after her trial? Now let's review our notes and our annotations so that we can prepare for the focusing question task in the next lesson, as well as our fluency homework handout 5A. This is for homework tonight. Now moving on to today's deep dive. Today we're going to be looking at past and present participles and how they work. So let's look at this sentence. Employed as a railroad sleeping car porter, Nixon worked tirelessly throughout his life to advance the rights of Black people. House 43. So this is in the book on page 43. This is the sentence that we're looking at. And I want you to note that when a participle or a participle phrase is at the beginning of a sentence, they place a comma after it. So here's the comma, and here's the sentence. So this sentence right here is a participle phrase. It's a participle phrase, okay? Because it starts, it begins the sentence, and there's a comma after it. So we know that this is our participle phrase right here. Employed as a railroad sleeping car porter. This is our participle phrase. Now, employed as a railroad sleeping car porter, which is on page 43, is called a participle phrase, and it means that the other words, that just means that the other words after employed give similar information. So the word employed is like a participle, but right after that it tells us that he was sleeping at a he was employed as a railroad sleeping car porter. And then right after that it says Nixon worked tirelessly. So we know that so this sentence right here, this phrase, Nixon worked tirelessly, is the same thing as letting me know that he is employed, because he was sleeping at the railroad car porter. He was sleeping there, and he worked tirelessly. So even from this sentence or this participle phrase, I can tell that the person that we're talking about worked tirelessly because they were always sleeping. And right after that, I just reiterated the same thing, that they worked tirelessly. So anytime you have a participle phrase, it just means that the other words that are after employed give similar information. So right here, can we tell that this person is working like really hard? Yes, because they're sleeping, so they're probably tired. And right here after that, can we tell that he's working really hard? Yes, because we said that he worked tirelessly. So let's look at these two sentences. The railroad employed Nixon as a sleeping car porter, and Nixon worked tirelessly throughout his life to advance the rights of people. How are these two sentences similar and different to the original sentence from the text? So we get the same information about Nixon. He was sleeping as a car porter, and he worked to advance the rights of Black people. The past participle lets us know to combine the two sentences, which makes it seem like the two ideas are related. So we need to know why he was sleeping, or why he was sleeping at the car porter. It was because he was working tirelessly to help Black people rights. So that's why we combined the sentence here, because the two sentences are related. So I want you to look at these two sentences. Miss Nesbitt inspired Claudette. Claudette grew in confidence during 10th and 11th grade. How can we combine these two sentences using a past or present participle? Here's another example. The way Black citizens were always pushed around frustrated Claudette. Claudette decided not to give up her seat on the bus for a white passenger. How can we make this one sentence? By underlining the participle and drawing the arrow to the word that it describes. All right, guys, that's going to be it for today's lesson. If you guys need any help, please come to office hours Monday through Friday, 11:22 to 12:06 p.m.